Hi, I'm Lori Kretschmar. I'm a communications strategist, former business journalist, and author of Tweet This, How to Amplify Your Brand on Twitter. And the best advice I ever got was just one word. Are you ready? Pause.
Pause. That's a great word. Who taught you that, Lori? When did you learn that?
Well, and let's specify, I'm talking Pause, not...
Yeah, not like that.
Exactly. Well, I predict in a few moments you and I will be talking about that old E.F. Hutton ad. But before we talk about the E.F. Hutton ad, I heard a speech instructor, a former TV journalist, give that advice that, and get this, she said when you walk into a room, Phil, you could actually pause in the doorway. And I thought that was humorous, you know? But it's always good to be reminded that we don't need to fill the air with chatter. And if you slow down or say, the most important thing is, people do listen. So I thought the pause was very helpful and useful. And
yeah, that's pretty poetic. So, well, let's talk about that because your book. I'm disappointed though. You did not say that I have to send 1,000 tweets a day, Lori, and I was really expecting, right, to amplify my brand. I just have to talk more. It was a lot more complicated than that. So let's talk about that, right? Because I think it's important that people understand this, that frequency doesn't equal amplification, right? So it's important to pause. So talk to me about Twitter for you. Like, how did you start with Twitter?
Well, they say less is more, right? And there's that old saying, before we talk about it, there's that old saying, it's attributed to Mark Twain, but it might not have been him, that he did not have enough time, so the letter was longer than it should have been. In other words, to spell it out, it would have taken more time to make it shorter. So I think there's a lot of truth to that. Well, I learned about Twitter a while ago, 2009. And I instantly took to it. I like the newsiness of it. I'm a former journalist. And I like that you see what's going on. And I like that you can pretty quickly see who's of interest and who you want to follow. And I think pretty early on, I already knew about Kara Swisher, former journalist, now podcaster extraordinaire. And, she's on Twitter pretty much all day long, even on vacation. So you can really see what she's up to, which, if you wanted to be on one of her podcasts, that would be really interesting just to know what's going on. And she travels a lot and to know that she was here and there. And then also more recently, I learned about Scott Galloway, who tweets as Prof. Galloway. And he's quite fascinating. And you just find these interesting characters. And some of them, are not big household names. I recently found out about a guy who goes by Nico. His Twitter handle is longer than that. But I'd never heard of him. And he just had a very poetic tweet, speaking of poetry, a couple years ago. And he was trying to gather volunteers for something I had not heard of, but many people have. It was the annual Christmas bird watch. And for the Audubon Society, for all those birding people out there. You know who you are.
The ornithologists in the group.
The ornithologists among us. And you just can find all these really interesting people. There's historians telling us what happened in the past, how it relates to today. There's just all kinds of stuff. And of course, salespeople, marketing people. And the really good people are not just spewing stuff at us, but they have interesting takes, and it's worth getting to know them. So all that kind of drew me in.
Interesting. That's interesting. So I follow Professor Galloway. I follow Scott Galloway. I think he's interesting too. I've never heard of Kara Swisher, but I see that she founded the Recode Conference, which is super interesting to me. So that's interesting. One of my favorite follows is actually Scott Monty. Do you know Scott Monty?
I know of him.
Yeah. So Scott and I go way back, from back when he was at Ford, maybe even before he was at Ford. And so he talked about history, right? He is the historian that I love the most because he is timeless, the history, and timely. the now. So he combines the two. That's Scott's brand on Twitter. And even I would argue, even when he was at Ford, that was his brand, even though he didn't call it that, because I counted on Scott to give me great marketing insight that was founded in history, right? Rooted in history, rooted in something, not just Twitter's the latest thing, which I think is important. And I know that's not how you feel either, that, oh, this is the only tool you need, but a tool in your tool set to make this work. So do you have to be, though, a nerdy historian or a ornithologist or a journalist in order to use Twitter? I mean, how do regular people stand out like me and you?
Well, here's one way that I think of it. So you're doing podcasts. Some people are still writing blog posts, or they're writing LinkedIn articles. They're doing speaking gigs, whether right here remotely or in person. So to me, that's real work when you're out there giving a public presentation of any kind. So to me, that's work. Okay, that's work. And then social media is where you say like, hey, are you going to the XYZ conference? I'm going to be there too. Or so to me, social media is where you like let people know. Like just yesterday, there's some timeless things, like about fear and sales. And just yesterday, it's all these are old themes, but people discover them on their own time. And just yesterday, I came across some quotable quotes. And sometimes, I don't know if you do this, Phil, I bet you do. Sometimes you post a tweet kind of to remind yourself.
Oh, all the time. Yeah, I usually tweet to me. Yeah.
All the time. Right. So there's lots going on. And I say, let social media help the rest of your professional life. Don't think of social media as this separate thing to do. Think of it as how can it help? And sometimes, sometimes it's nurturing relationships or just seeing what others are saying. Some guy yesterday, with a large following, just followed me, and I went to just go see who he is, what he's about. And he had some nice comment about how it's so easy to say 2 words, thank you. Like, thank you, Phil, for having me on. So of course, I mean, that tweet almost wrote itself. I wrote to him and said, thank you. So simple.
That's funny. Yeah.
So simple, so easy.
And yet so underdone.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. And you had a comment recently I saw that you were sharing the lovely idea of if you see someone taking a group photo, like, hey, you could take the photo for them. It'll take like 80 seconds out of your day, 90 seconds, and it could give them a whole memory, right? You could say it better in your words.
Yeah, for sure, right? So yeah, if you see somebody taking a selfie, pause and be part of their selfie. Take it for them, right? Flip the camera on and take it for them to create a memory. I mean, because otherwise you get the one person, usually, by the way, that's usually me, with the big head in the picture, and then everybody else is normal. And I'm like, I'm going to take a picture, right? And so if we flip that up and we take it for them, right, we can create a memory for them.
Yeah, it looks better, looks better too.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, for sure.
So like little tips like that could help a salesperson on their next event. If they're feeling uncomfortable, they could say like, oh, I can be of help here. And then they'll feel more at ease.
Definitely.
I really like Twitter, and I think others can benefit. And that's why I wrote the book.
Cool. That's cool. I love that. So let's be a little bit practical here. So let's start with the Twitter bio, because I think that's often missed. I think it's great real estate. I mean, if you mention to someone that you're on Twitter, they're going to go to your bio, right? They're going to find you. They're going to put in your name and they're going to come up with you. So let's talk about your bio, or maybe your bio page. So what's important there, Lori? What do we need to put?
Okay. Well, I always like to also talk to the newbies, the people who are like confused by what you just said. So, the bio is a little space, a description. You get 160 characters, which is not nothing. It's not a lot. The good thing is you have to be succinct, right? And I put in a variety of these bios in my book so people can skim and see. And by the way, at one extreme, Stephen King, the horror author, he just has one word, author. But then someone like Tim Cook at Apple, He talks about Duke, his alma mater. He talks about the national parks. He has a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. I mean, you might not expect that from Tim Cook at Apple. And meanwhile, there's a very funny guy at the head of Box. His name is Aaron Levy, and on Twitter, he's just his last name Levie. And his is humorous, and he says that he may not believe everything he writes, and he also says "Go ABBA," the band. So we don't really know how to take that, but again, very witty guy. So you have room right there, and you might want to just have some nouns and verbs. In general, I tell people, like, see what else is out there and then figure out what works for you. And then if you can, try to make something fun. I know of an executive coach who's very serious, but she loves jazz and opera. And I said, maybe you could sprinkle that in. And then I heard, on a personal note, I heard of a family member who is into non-binary and gender fluidity. And I thought, oh my gosh, as a supportive family member, I want to let people know that I support this. So I found that rainbow emoji and put it up and wrote ally. So, rainbow emoji ally means, I support and love, all kinds of people.
Awesome. So with that, on the bio page, you also have a header graphic that you can use.
Yes.
What should we put in there? I usually put, right now, like, I'm advertising my podcast, but you're starting out, like, what do you talk about there? What do you put in there?
Right. Well, the main thing is, as you just said, you've got this real estate at the top of your Twitter page, also the top of your LinkedIn page. And I think it's ridiculous when sales and marketing people don't use that real estate, because it's there for you and it costs nothing. So if you have a book coming out or a podcast, put that up there. My favorite default is a beautiful picture that you took yourself of nature instead of a
the default boring gray stick thing. Yeah, the stock image. Yeah.
Sales and marketing. I like your little banners right here. See, you're using the real estate.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think it's important. Everything that we say and doesn't say contributes to our brand. Right.
Yeah.
If we're talking about, if we use somebody else's photo, we're basically saying, well, I'm not that interesting. Maybe this person is.
And I also talk, like, you can go see what others are doing. And, some are more boring, some are more straightforward. But it's a chance to show a little glimpse of your personality. And by the way, many people on LinkedIn aren't using the header, and it's just crazy, man. Because again,
I totally agree.
It's free space. And the neat thing too is, you can change it, especially on Twitter. Right now, I still have this. I like the nature image up there. I haven't put about my book up yet on my Twitter handle, on my Twitter page. Believe it or not, I put it on LinkedIn. But I like that feeling of nature,
Yeah, right. And it's about you.
Yeah, right. So you want to do something that's sort of, the personal, professional you, to give people a glimpse. And when in doubt, I say fall back on nature, because you can't go wrong.
Interesting. Fall back on nature. That's interesting advice. So I like that. So with that, you talk about being interesting, which I think is important, but also important is to be interested. So how do we show people that we're interested in them on Twitter, on LinkedIn, so that we can maybe get their attention, and so maybe they get interested in us?
Yeah, well, it's a great topic, Phil. So one thing I say to people, it's my version of tough love. It's not that tough, okay? So at minimum, if we're related, or if we work together, or we used to work together, and I say something that's pretty good, the least you could do is like it. Now, but a like is actually fairly weak. A like means nothing. And if you like something on LinkedIn, I'm not really going to notice, especially, like, let's say we haven't met and I write some popular post or post a popular podcast, and you're one of many, many likes. So you're not really going to stand out. But if you make a comment, it's more likely I'm going to see it. Now, there's a bar there, because, like, let's suppose I'm busy and I want to comment. Let's suppose I want to follow my own advice, okay? at minimum, I could write thank you, or I could write congrats. But again, that's not really contributing that much. So if I'm in a hurry, I give myself permission just to say congrats or thanks if that's the appropriate thing to say. But to take another step further and to stand out from the crowd and to show off a little of what makes you different, you could add a comment. So I have an example for you. Are you ready? There's an extremely inspiring person named Allison Levine. She's literally climbed Everest twice. The first time, so I'm going to talk about Allison briefly, okay? The first time she and her group it was all women and they got tons of publicity. I believe it was due to bad weather. They didn't get to the actual peak. They were really close, but they didn't make it. And she calls that her failure-versary. She celebrates it now. And she was able to go back another time and get to the peak of Mount Everest. By the way, she says the challenge is not getting to the peak, it's reserving enough energy that you can get back down safely. That's the crucial part. So Allison's just this very inspiring person I met a few years ago. I met her in person, which is really nice when you can meet someone in person, not just online. And she just posted this very long post on LinkedIn about this incredible experience she had when she was a college student and a bunch of people from Mattel came into the restaurant she was at. And it's a really good story. You should go look it up. Allison with 1 L, Levine. And at the end, she wrote, apparently it was National Intern Day or Week or something, which I didn't know. Well, I thought, you know what? She had a great intern story. I'm going to share one of mine because I had a great intern story. So, and I'd never actually shared it publicly, but just in the comments, I wrote my little version of true story of an intern experience I had. And then she commented, and it was so nice of her to take time from her day. And then other people noticed that. And it made me feel good. And that, you know, you can preach this better than I can. That isn't that part of life, helping people feel good for, you know, how we actually feel. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And if we do that equation real quick, you talk about like being weak, comment of great, nice job, something lame is better than a like. And then a meaningful comment is great. And then a comment back is even better. And I totally agree with that. I think that's so important to think about. And then I would take it one more up. And whether it's Twitter with a retweet or LinkedIn with a repost, a reshare, I think those are even better. And if you do a good job of it, don't just do that, but add your insight to that. And now you really have an opportunity to kind of piggyback off Allison's brand in this case, Gary Vaynerchuk's brand, right? I see Gary as someone that gets a lot of people who do that. But I'd also say sometimes we can steal people that are fans of Gary or fans of Allison because they don't know, they're so busy and so overwhelmed with comments, they don't get a chance to interact with all of them. So we can look for opportunities of people that are like us, right? You mentioned that before. And now we can comment on them and we can respond to them, and maybe we garner some more fans. Is that, are you doing that too, Lori?
Absolutely. And I like how you explained that. That was good. Good job. And when you and I agree that a like is weak, it's better than nothing. I mean, it's much better than the people who
That's right.
And, you know, the people who only do nothing, you know, they're known as lurkers, L-U-R-K. And most people, you know, for years and years in online communities, all the studies show most people are merely lurking. And sometimes, you know, if you're checking out a client or something, sometimes you want to lurk. But if you really want to show engagement and get to know people and share your insights, you and I agree that one should comment. And on Twitter, you can simply reshare what someone's saying or retweet, or you can quote tweet where you add your 2 cents. So it's
and LinkedIn just added that too. They made it more Twitter-like in the last couple of weeks, where you can just share, which is nice. But yeah, always whenever you add your own insight to it, you make it way more relevant to your audience, because otherwise they're like, well, hey, I'm not following Lori. Why is she in my feed? Right. I mean, that's the thing I've seen. So, So I always think it's important. Add your own commentary to that, especially if you're trying to build your brand, amplify your brand. You want to be seen as someone who is on peer with those people that you admire, not just regular people. And if you're in sales, to show yourself as a helpful person instead of just as someone who, you know, navel gazes. Hi, I'm really cool. I sold stuff today, and that's real nice, right? I mean, because I see that, or hey, yay, I just crushed my quota, and all your prospects are like, crush your quota? I thought you were helping customers. Why did you do that?
Right. Well, you know what? Speaking of jargon, so the way that PR people, a field I am now in, the way that PR people is not the way that journalists talk. And a journalist would never in a million years say, I gave a hit to such and such company. PR people say we got a hit. And it just sounds terrible because the journalist thinks like, I had to cover the story because there was actual news there and I wanted to inform people. And they're not thinking like, this is good for the company. It just sounds bad.
Yeah.
So
language matters. Yeah,
language matters. Yes. Pause before you write something. See if it's appropriate, right? Fits your brand. And I'm not super tough on myself. Some days just saying congrats might be good enough if you're super busy or you don't know the person that well, or you haven't figured out your unique angle yet.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that, Lori. I think that's a good place to go here. Let's talk about unique angles and how we find that and how we take advantage of that. Because, in your book, right, you're talking about amplifying your brand, but you have to have a brand before you can amplify it, right? I mean, it's nice. Otherwise, you turn on your radio and it sounds like static, or it's like a Cotton Eye Joe, right? And then bid for Cotton Eye. It's like, is that country music? Is that rap? What is that crap? Turn it off. That's noisy and junky.
Okay, wait a minute. Before I answer any of your questions, Phil, you were just talking about taking a trip without really knowing where you're going.
Yeah.
So I think implicit in your taking a trip is the same idea that you have to have some idea of where you're going or who you are, where your brand is. So we're agreeing a lot today. I do think you need to have some idea of who you are, and you can switch it up, you can modify it, but have some idea of who you are. And then I've got this formula: create, amplify, build. You're going to create your content, amplify it like through Twitter and LinkedIn, and keep building your network, because it's really, you really need all of that.
Yeah. I like that. So you kind of have an idea of where you're going. What define that? What does that mean to you, Lori? Because I think people hear that as a salesperson, as a marketer, right? As someone in corporate America, and is like, no, I just know I need to be here, right? Phil and Lori said, go to Twitter. Phil and Lori said, you should go on LinkedIn. But what does that mean?
Right. Well, a couple things is you're going to see who else is out there and who in your field. Like you just mentioned Scott Monty. So someone could go look up Scott Monty and then see who Scott Monty is following. And that's going to lead to something interesting. Some people call it the rabbit hole. You might want to set your alarm or whatever, so you're not spending hours. But you can see who you're following, Phil. So you can really prospect people. And there's this thing called lists. I'd like to talk about that for a moment.
Yeah.
I mentioned someone in my book, I don't name her name, but she's created a list, a thing you can do on Twitter, of 650 business women that she wants to sort of know what they're up to. And rather than her following 650 individual accounts, she created a list. And hers is a private list. There's private lists and public lists. And she can just go see what those 650 people are talking about, kind of at a glance. And I created a list like this because we have a family member who is an expert in evolutionary biology, which is not my field. But I created a public list of evolutionary biologists and science people, and more than 50 of them love this list, and they can follow each other. And with a list, you can look at things two ways. You can see who's tweeted most recently and who is a member of the list, because there might be some prominent member who hasn't tweeted in a month or 2 months. But you can look at it each way. And I love your little prompts on screen. Thank you, Phil. That's real added value in your podcast. Create a list of people to follow. Now, the thing is, lists are kind of time consuming to create, but you can piggyback, go to other people and see what lists they're following. You go to their profile and click around for lists. And you'll see, if you go to my page, which is LK here, you can see what public lists I'm following. And some of them might be of interest to you. And then you could follow them or not. Now, if you do create your own list, what's nice is it's sort of automatically associated with your profile. So rather than wondering like, where the heck is it? You just go to your profile. So lists can be great. So in general, you want to find people of interest in your field. And especially if you're going to a conference, you want to see who else is going. And then maybe you want to do a tweet saying like, hey, I'm going to be at the HubSpot conference, or I'm going to be at South by Southwest. And you see what they're talking about. Right now, South, the locals call it South by. They don't bother saying Southwest. Right now, from what I'm seeing, people are voting on which panels should be allowed to occur. So people out there are begging for you to vote on their panel.
Yeah, I've seen that too. That's so interesting. I love your commentary there about conferences, because I think people, right, if you're listening and you're in sales or you're in marketing or you're looking for a job or you're someone who wants to break into a community, you find a conference that you want to attend, you look for the hashtag, you can follow the hashtag, and you can see if the conference organizer or someone that's in that has created a list of those people, and then
Yes.
follow them and you get to be part of the conversation. You can kind of jump in and be like, hey, I'm here too. No, don't do that. Just take part, right? Take part in it and try to add value to the conversation. Don't be one of those hosers that just jumps in the middle, right?
Right. Add value. Yep. And meetups, meetups.
Yeah.
Locally, I mentioned in my book, there's two great people who were each doing meetups for content people. And I said to them years ago, like, hey, you two should meet. And now they're big buddies. And their main meetup it's content_meetup. It was for the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, but because of the pandemic, they went global. And the two main people there are Dennis Shao and Rich Schwerin. And they're in my book. Dennis is D Shao, DSHIAO. And Rich he goes by Green Cognito. And he's worked
cool.
Yeah, he's worked at big tech companies, and I've asked him, how has he managed having a personal brand while being at a big tech company? And he does it really well. And he, to quote Rich, to give credit where credit is due, he falls back in that old school thinking, which is don't do anything that if it were on the front page of the New York Times or the Miami Herald, that would really embarrass you. So keep in mind it's, Twitter's pretty public, as is LinkedIn. You might need an account to see, but like if someone says something, be aware that others can see it. By the way, I would like to talk about complaints now, may I?
Oh, yeah, complain away. Do you want to make one about me, or where do we want to go here, Lori? Because it's okay, I can take it. Go ahead, feedback. All right. No, just kidding. Right, complaints. Absolutely.
A lot of people on Twitter who are not in sales and marketing and haven't read my book, some people use Twitter mainly to complain to airlines. But my theme here is it's public out there. So like, let's suppose you'd never heard of me till today, thanks to Phil, and you went to look me up. And let's suppose it's not true. Let's suppose my last 5 tweets were complaining to the airline, to, the car services. Like then I think that would look, to me, I would not want to meet me, because I don't like people complain all the time, So yeah. Twitter can be a way to reach out to customer service people, but let's think of the customer service people having to deal with those tweets. So you want to be polite, because your reputation is at stake here. It's okay to complain, of course, but you want to be polite, for goodness sakes. How do you feel about that, Phil?
Yeah, well, I agree. I think it's okay to complain, and it's fine to say, you know what, this kind of sucked. But I do think it's important to be as polite, I guess, or I would say as kind as you could be, right? And you don't have to be nice, but you need to be kind, right? You need to be kind. Well, no, because I think nice is like, I don't want to tell you the truth, right? I think kind is more, right? I think kind is direct, right? Kind is direct and saying something that, hey, this wasn't up to par, as opposed to, oh, it's okay, I'm sorry that this sucked. No, it's not my fault that Delta lost my bags for the 57th time. And I'm picking on Delta because I love Delta, by the way. I'm a big Delta fan. I can say that in jest, right? Even though they're not perfect. But I like Delta quite a bit. And, I get that, right? I absolutely see that. But don't make that 5 tweets in a row. I think that's great advice. And certainly be factual
Oh
and
yeah,
not
be
a pain in the
factual
butt, right?
right. And in general, I like to take it, into, if you follow the airlines, they'll probably ask you to direct message them, and you want to reserve all the gory details if there are any. Keep it, just remember that people who don't know you might glance at your Twitter feed someday, even if you don't feel really famous. If we're going to the same conference, I might look you up, and I'm going to judge you if you're complaining all the time. Sorry, that's what it is. And by the way, I've heard of some, now and then I look up tech leaders because I'm in that field. I work with tech leaders and executive coaches and all. And like I looked up someone who's got a very high position, and his Twitter feed he uses it as a complaint mechanism, and he could be amplifying some positive messages about his company, his products, his services. It's a little tedious.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah, and he's not using it to its maximum.
Yeah. Well, not even 1%, right? I mean, you talk in the book, right? Our goal is to amplify our brand in a good way, not necessarily a negative way. Because everything we do can be amplified. Everything we are and what we say and don't say can say a lot about who we are, whether you're on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever. So Lori, let's talk a little bit about that here before we wrap, because I think content is an important thing that we need to think about. And you talk strongly in your book about an editorial calendar. And if I'm not a solo person, right? If I'm a business person that's in corporate America, if I'm in sales, right? How complicated or complex should an editorial calendar be? And can you give us a simple one that maybe we can actually use?
Yeah. Well, so to me, it's pretty simple.
Yay.
Yay. So we don't need to overcomplicate this. But like if you just look ahead at, look at your own work calendar. Are you going to any conferences? You could be writing about them before, during, and after. Are there some people you really admire in your field, or do you have some favorite quotable quotes? I love finding out birthdays. Yesterday was August 11th was Steve Wozniak's birthday, and a friend of mine, who's sometimes a partner of mine, he wrote a book. So yesterday was like the perfect day to promote my friend's book. It's called All About Steve Wozniak, and it's for readers of all ages. And my friend has also written about Barack Obama. All about Barack Obama. And sometimes I tag the publishing company. In any case, so you find excuses, and there's all these. The other day I'd never heard of this. It was National S'mores Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I worked for a while with an organic produce company, and they would promote a different vegetable every week. So, there's a lot of latitude. You can look what's out there. You can see what makes sense for you. If you're a candy company or a bakery, you're going to go big on Halloween, aren't you?
I would hope so.
Yes, you are. But maybe it's not quite a fit for your enterprise technology company. So you want to see what's already in the works. If you, if you're bringing in interns or you're celebrating interns, you can select themes like that. By the way, one mortgage company I know, every day on a holiday, like on Christmas Day, on Memorial Day, they send videos on the actual holiday, where I would like a little bit of a break, So I try not to open their stuff on the actual day, because it's like I don't want to give them that positive reinforcement. Like, don't bug me on an actual weekend holiday, please. Because aren't we all supposed to take breaks for our sanity and mental health? Yes, we are.
Yeah. Well, not only that, I think that's, that's scheduled, because they're not working. It is like they're checking the box. I will tell you, one of the things that drives me nuts is people that spend good money on holiday cards that are mechanically signed and send them out and pretend like they're personalized.
Don't do that. Worst. Chill, everybody.
Yeah, I hate it, right? In fact, I have one of my friends back in Milwaukee took umbrage because he did that one year. I was not talking about him, by the way, because It's funny, his company sent me one, he sent me one. Like his was signed, his company's one. I don't care. So Chris Sherman, if you're listening, I love you. It was not you. It really was not you. So anyway, but I got 3 of the exact same card with the exact same stamp, except just the partners were different on the 3 law firms in Milwaukee. And I was like, this is really lame. Not to mention, they had no idea if I actually celebrate Christmas.
Right.
Or not.
Not everyone
because
does.
It's not right. So, Gerbishak could go anyway, right? It might not even be my real last name. So,
and then there's that Festivus holiday, but let's not make
right.
So anyway,
the feats of strength.
You figure out the dates that are meaningful to you and your company and your brand, and then you try to plot things around it. And it's not that hard. By the way, years ago, I interviewed an incredible artist, and her name is Trina Shart-Hyman, just gorgeous art. And it turns out she was born on April 5th. So every year on April 5th, I tweet about this artist. I was fortunate enough to interview her years ago. And it's just, to me, April 5th is a great day to celebrate her. It's her birthday. Now, I sometimes also celebrate the day she passed, which happened to be in November. But it's more fun to celebrate people on their birthday.
Totally agree. Yeah, that's one of my big tips about connections.
Oh my gosh.
Happy birthday.
I just remembered today. I don't know, viewers, when you're seeing this, people, but I'd always wondered, I have these incredible Japanese wood blocks, and I always wondered when the artist was born, and it took a lot of work. I had to write to a professor, and it's August 12th. So later on, you'll be seeing a tweet from me. And if I
awesome.
Because it's just an easy, birthdays are just an easy way to celebrate a quotable quote or a great person. And you don't have to go wild. You don't have to, unless it's your day job, you don't need to have a birthday every day, a quote every day. But you want to do what's meaningful for you and your brand.
Yeah, I think that's great advice as we're kind of wrapping up here, that folks need to do what's meaningful for them and their brand, and not necessarily be like Lori or be like Phil. The goal is to be more of you.
Yes.
So I think that's great advice. As we kind of wrap here, Lori, I want you to just go a little deeper into your formula, because I think that's a great place for folks to get started. Then we'll talk about how folks, by the way, if you're listening here, we've got a secret code gift for you coming up. So stay tuned for that. But with that, talk to me a little bit more about your formula, but create and amplify and build, because I think that's a great place for folks to get started on their journey in social media, specifically on Twitter, because that's where your book's all about.
Yeah. So thanks again for putting it on screen. Create, Amplify, Build, or CAB. It gets you from here to there, wherever your there is. And there is a pre-step. The pre-step is you have to kind of know a little bit about who you are, okay? So know who you are. And, some people call that positioning, and there's high-paid experts on that. And I mentioned a couple books in my book to help you with positioning. But once you kind of know who you are, then you want to follow this formula of create, amplify, brand, build. Create, amplify, build. And you're going to create the content. Some people hire out, and I do help with that. Whether it's articles for LinkedIn or other publications. And then I know many authors who feel like once they've written the book, they're done. But no. As au contraire. As that's when the whole marketing, and I call it amplify. So you want to use Twitter and LinkedIn and whatever your favorite mediums, TikTok or Facebook, WhatsApp, Be Real, to amplify all that great content you've created. And the real secret, it turns out in life, is to build your network. And Phil, I'm so glad you and I have gotten to get to know each other a little bit, because that's you really want your friends sharing your good stuff. The stuff that also helps their brand, where it's a win-win.
Definitely. I love that, Lori. That's fantastic. So create, right? Amplify, build. We can do all that.
It keeps going.
Create. Yeah, and it's a circle, right?
It's clockwise, I'm going to say.
Yeah. Oof. And if it goes really fast, you can get cooler by it if you live in the hot Florida sun. No, let's not do that. So
And you cannot just I'm reiterating, okay? You cannot just create. That's only, no, because people might never hear about you. You got to amplify it, or get your friends to amplify, and then you can say, like, see what Phil said. Phil said, get my book. Listen to Phil.
That's right. Phil is saying get the book, right?
And the goal is to keep building that network. So you're meeting new people, they're meeting you, and you're going to find your right customers, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Superb advice. So friends, if you're listening here, get a copy of Tweet This, right? It's a great book. Now, here's the thing. Lori is so sweet. I didn't know this when we were starting out today. Lori says, hey, would it be okay if I gave your folks something extra for nothing? I'm like, really? Yes. I like free stuff. So, friends, if you're listening, if you're watching, go to upwithsocial.com. You'll see she's got bonuses there. Now, buy the book. Okay, buy the book. Get a copy of Tweet This. But even before, if you're like, well, I want to taste a little bit more of Lori because she's brilliant. She's got a lot of great stuff. If you go there, you'll see where it says bonuses. It says a receipt field, friends. Instead of putting in your receipt number, you can put in the secret code of Phil. That's PHIL. Remember, I'm Phil. Now you get to be Phil too. PHIL. And you can get a free copy of Lori's worksheet, which also has 5. You said the first 5 tweets you should send, Lori. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's a cheat sheet worksheet, and I suggest 5 tweets if you haven't tweeted yet. And then also at upwithsocial.com, you can also download the first chapter of my book for free if you'd like. And you'll learn about, there's 3 myths about Twitter in there and 3 truths. Get some good stuff.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. So friends, go to upwithsocial.com, get a copy of the book, and then come back, put in code Phil, because I can never find my receipt codes. Let me just be totally honest here. I never can find those damn codes, Lori. So I can usually remember my own name. Don't quote me on that. But get a copy of the book and then go to upwithsocial.com, put in the code Phil, and get to know Lori Kretschmar a little bit more. So Lori, if folks want to get to know you, are you going to send them to Twitter or LinkedIn or both? How should they best find you?
Well, if you go on Twitter, please look me up, LK here. Please say hi. And I do follow back. And I am also on LinkedIn as Lori Kretschmar. So you can find me either place. And for more about the book, you go to upwithsocial.com.
Absolutely. So friends, if you're listening and not looking at the screen, it's LK here. That's the letter L as in Lima, the letter K as in Kilo, here, H-E-R-E, and Kretschmar is K-R-E-T-C-H-M-A-R. The book is Tweet This. Go to Up With Social, friends. Check it out. Lori's fantastic. Lots of great stuff here for helping you amplify your brand on Twitter. Thank you, Lori.